The Apollo Theater opened over 100 years ago, and it has proven to be a sanctuary for black musicians, in fact, all musicians, ever since. The stage helped launch the careers of famous names such as Ella Fitzgerald and Godfather of Soul, James Brown.
Now a new documentary is outlining its historic legacy. CBS This Morning Saturday co-host Michelle Miller takes us behind the scenes.
We use the music and art to overcome that and to sort of voice our pain, our struggle as black people. And that was the way I wanted to tell the story of the Apollo, to put it in context of what was going on in Harlem and what was going on in America, and how the music, from Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit, which was a protest song, and the only place she could sing that song is on the stage of the Apollo, all the way to James Brown singing I'm Black and I'm Proud in 1968, a tumultuous year in America. So that was how I was going to tell the story.
Yeah, that's all we're going to give you. But you can catch the rest of that story tomorrow on CBS This Morning Saturday. And guess who we have here? Michelle Miller's joining us to discuss the impact of the Apollo stage, the impact that it has had. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
This seems like such a massive endeavor because the Apollo has meant so much to so many people for so many decades and generations.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah. 7 years it took this to really come to fruition, but it's over, the course of 7+ decades.
Right.
1934, this institution started in the heyday of really burlesque in Harlem. And this was a whites-only district. They would not allow blacks to come and enjoy the district that was in their residence,
wow.
right? So
it was a whites only. Were there black performers on stage?
Well, certainly. You had black performers on stage, but this was before really, this is the district in which it dawned.
Right.
And the district in which it dawned came out of this burlesque entertainment scene. And a man by the name of Frank Schiffman bought the theater and said, no, we're going to open it up to African Americans, not only on stage, but African Americans to come and enjoy themselves in the history of music. And it was all over the map. You had, jazz of the day, you had swing of the day, you had black and white performers who had an opportunity to sort of make it. And then a man by the name of Ralph Cooper joined Ralph Cooper and really had the innovation to say, let's help people who nobody knows about. And he started Amateur Night, and the rest is history. I mean, Ella Fitzgerald was among the first to star. She gets up on stage and she forgets her lines, and thus the dawn of scat.
Yeah.
I mean, right there on the Apollo Theater. Stage. So you've had such a range from, from jazz to rock and roll and everything in between.
Yeah. What's interesting is the question here says, why did it attract so many legendary artists? But I think what a lot of people forget, and a lot of young people especially forget, is that when you go to the Apollo and you see that big photo they have in the lobby of all the stars,
all the people,
you realize that they're showing you the stars after they became legends.
Yeah.
The reality is when they came to the Apollo, they, in many instances, were just starting out.
They were starting out. So, there was this thing called the Motown Review.
Right. That's one of my favorite parts of the doc.
And what's so cool about what we did is what the documentary did was that they went back and they grabbed Billy Mitchell, who started his career in the early 60s as an errand boy for the Apollo. He told me, he said, I started there. James Brown, he said, would call him over and say, dude, you need to make sure you go to school.
Right.
This is nowhere to live.
Yeah.
You got, and so Billy Mitchell created his career there as sort of Mr. Apollo. Talks about how, the Motown Review was something that he was like, I was just kind of catching on. You had everybody from Gladys Knight, the Jackson 5, they came later. Right. Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Yeah.
You had the Temptations. These people were just starting their careers.
Out.
And then boom.
Yeah.
They became almost instantaneous stars with this new sound. It was incredible.
So I haven't seen the documentary both of you guys have, but it occurred to me that we're talking about all the people that grace the stage, but also one of the kind of most powerful characters of the Apollo, it's the audience.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was this incredible testing ground because the audience told you whether you had talent or not.
That's exactly right. And in fact, in the doc, you see a remarkable moment. You see a very young Lauryn Hill. She's probably not even 15 years old, and she's singing. I can't remember what song she's singing, and it's good, but it's flat.
Oh,
And the audience,
booed
man, it was rough. And she's a little girl. And she's still up there. She's holding the mic and she's singing. But they're just like,
they're relentless. No,
go.
look, because they're honest, right? And it has the reputation of honesty. Not only was Lauryn Hill booed at first, Billy Mitchell told me that, in fact, James Brown was booed by the Apollo crowd because he was not bringing it like he should. And he was dressed in a certain way that, you know, they're like, you look a little country there. So, I mean, he then adapted his sound and his look, so to speak.
There's also some wonderful stories, a lot of anecdotes in this documentary about like how, for example, Gladys Knight and the Pips, like I think Gladys says something like, if you weren't a big star, like you had your dressing room was way up at the top, right? And then the bigger star you were, you had a dressing room close to the stage. But like if you were way up top, you had to like run down.
Hustle down. And not only that, they were paid, like I think it's something like, you know, they had something like, 3 shows a night.
Yeah, many shows,
like 15 shows a week, and they were paid like, you know, $15,000, which at the time for like was piddly
not a lot of money,
right? It was not. So
and the doc does a really good thing of not only in speaking about the monies that the artists weren't really getting paid because it wasn't a lot of money. There's that, but as you pointed out, Michelle, it does a deep dive into the neighborhood and how a lot of these artists would come to New York City, to Harlem, but not be able to shop in the supermarkets or the stores, department stores in Harlem, in the center of Harlem, which I think a lot of people find astounding. And then it shows the notes that Mr. Schiffman and his son kept of everybody.
Everything. They detailed everything.
And so when you see like Billie Holiday unable to perform or did not perform well because she's on medication, meaning drugs, you know, or, you know, Stevie Wonder, amazing performer, watch this kid, you know, like.
Well, what's so interesting is that not only were those notes so detailed from the Schiffmans, but much of this, really, the treasure trove that they were able to collect came out of the basements of people who either performed or family members who had, you know, of people who performed, because so much of the history was lost at the Apollo because the basement there went through, you know, like floods and, you know, it was not kept in the best shape. So the fact that the Apollo itself had gone through so much decline and then rebirth, 3 separate, you know, time periods in which it went through decline, rebirth, and now it's in this era of true renaissance. It's not only offering artists that everyone knows an opportunity, but it is now helping young people to venture outside of just stage performances. It is helping them to become the behind the scenes creators and tech people, and it's taking it outside of the theater itself. The district of the Apollo is launching, and it's
pretty cool.
It is really cool. It's an educational facility, a nonprofit, and it really is just, you know, the dawn of a new age.
And you would think that we did your entire piece here, but there's so much more to uncover so that people can tune in to see Michelle's full report.
Yeah, and I have to say, you know, I'm part of the history now.
How so?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Well, have you guys ever covered, like, sadly, tragically, but I covered the passing of Prince from the Apollo.
Michael
Jackson for you, right? I don't know if you've ever, but it's kind of a really.
It's a place where you go to mourn because so many of them perform there, and so many of them, the Apollo Theater was part of their not only their history but their heart.
Yeah.
Before there was social media, when people actually gathered in real life.
I miss those days.
You know about those days?
Yeah, I do know about those days. Somebody yesterday said to me, you know, I used to listen to Alicia Keys because she was here this week, right? And they were like, Vlad, I used to listen to her on this thing called CDs. And I was like, this was Giselle. I was like, what? No. She's like, you know CDs? I'm like,
no, never heard of them.
No, we know the 8-track, right?
So true. Oh, Michelle, we could do this all day long. You can catch Michelle's full report tomorrow on CBS This Morning, Saturday. It streams at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern right here on CBSN.